When we think of criminals, words like money, power, drugs, and murder often come to mind. These individuals, often ruthless and cunning, have engaged in heinous acts in pursuit of wealth and dominance, leaving behind a trail of destruction and chaos. Their stories, marked by ambition, deceit, and violence, have not only shocked society, but have also sparked debates over justice, morality, and the nature of crime. Many of these criminals have achieved a level of infamy so profound that they've transcended their roles as mere lawbreakers, becoming figures of fascination and, in some cases, legends. Their actions have shaped history, altered the course of law enforcement, and even influenced the global political landscape. From the banks of the American Midwest to the streets of London, their criminal enterprises have fueled both public fear and a strange form of admiration. Whether as infamous gangsters, ruthless terrorists, or chilling serial killers, these criminals have etched their names into history. Their stories have been immortalized in books, films, and songs, often blurring the line between criminal and folk hero. Here are 10 of the most famous criminals who became symbols of rebellion, terror, and wealth, each one leaving a dark yet unforgettable legacy. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, two of the most notorious criminals of the 1930s, captured the public's imagination during the Great Depression. The duo became infamous for a string of robberies across the U.S., including banks, stores, and even police stations, which were often marked by violent shootouts with law enforcement. Despite their criminal activities, they were romanticized in the media, becoming symbols of rebellion against the poverty and desperation many Americans faced during the era. Their crime spree, which lasted from 1932 to 1934, ended when they were ambushed and killed by law enforcement in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. Their legacy has since been memorialized in books, movies, and songs, depicting them as both criminals and outlaws who challenged authority. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, born into a wealthy Saudi family in 1957, became one of the most infamous figures in modern history due to his leadership of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. He was responsible for orchestrating the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the U.S., which killed nearly 3,000 people and led to the U.S. launching the War on Terror. Bin Laden's ideologies were rooted in radical Islamic extremism, and he used his vast wealth and network to spread his influence globally. For nearly a decade, he evaded capture, becoming one of the most wanted men in the world. In May 2011, he was located in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and killed by U.S. Navy SEALs. His death marked a significant moment in the fight against terrorism, but his actions and ideologies have left a long-lasting impact on global security and politics. Jesse James. Jesse James was a legendary figure in the American Old West, known for his daring robberies and outlaw lifestyle. Born in 1847 in Missouri, he was the leader of the James Younger Gang, which carried out numerous bank and train robberies throughout the Midwest. His robberies, often portrayed as acts of resistance against the powerful and corrupt, made him a folk hero among some impoverished communities, even as he was considered a dangerous criminal by law enforcement. James was shot and killed by a fellow gang member, Robert Ford, in 1882, in what became one of the most notorious betrayals in American history. His legacy continues to be celebrated in American folklore and popular culture. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, is one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, luring them to his suburban Chicago home with promises of work or money before torturing, sexually assaulting, and killing them. Gacy's persona as a beloved local figure, often seen performing as a clown at children's parties, contrasted sharply with his horrifying crimes. His victims' bodies were found buried beneath his house and in nearby rivers, making his capture a chilling revelation. Gacy was convicted of his crimes and executed in 1994. His story has been the subject of documentaries, books, and films, underscoring the shocking juxtaposition of his public and private lives. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, terrorized Southern California in the mid-1980s. Between 1984 and 1985, he committed a series of brutal murders burglaries, and sexual assaults, often targeting elderly victims and using satanic rituals as part of his crime spree. His killing spree, which left at least 14 people dead and many others traumatized, was marked by random acts of violence, making him one of the most terrifying serial killers in modern history. Ramirez's ability to evade capture for months added to the fear he instilled in the public. He was arrested in 1985, convicted of 13 murders, and sentenced to death. He spent years on death row before dying from cancer in 2013. Jack the Ripper. The identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. Active in London's Whitechapel district in 1888, Jack the Ripper is believed to have murdered at least 5 women, all of whom were prostitutes. The brutality of the crimes, which included mutilation of the victims' bodies, shocked the city and led to widespread fear. Despite numerous theories and investigations over the years, the Ripper's true identity has never been confirmed. The case remains one of the most notorious and intriguing in the annals of crime, and Jack the Ripper has become a symbol of mystery, terror, and intrigue in popular culture. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos is one of the most infamous female serial killers in American history. Born in 1956, Wuornos was convicted of killing 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. She claimed that her murders were acts of self-defense, as she said the men had attempted to assault her while she was working as a prostitute. Wuornos was arrested and convicted of 6 of the murders and was sentenced to death. She became a media sensation, and her story was later adapted into the 2003 film Monster, with Charlize Theron portraying Wuornos. Wuornos' execution in 2002 sparked debate over her mental health and the nature of her crimes, with some viewing her as a victim of circumstance, while others saw her as a cold-blooded killer. Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar, born in 1949 in Colombia, is often regarded as one of the most powerful and dangerous criminals in modern history. As the leader of the Medellin cartel, Escobar controlled a large portion of the cocaine trade between Colombia and the United States during the 1980s. His cartel was responsible for thousands of deaths as Escobar used violence, corruption, and terror to maintain his power and wealth. Escobar became one of the richest men in the world, with his fortune estimated at $30 billion. However, his reign of terror ended in 1993 when he was killed by Colombian police in a dramatic shootout. Despite his death, his legacy continues to affect Colombia and the global drug trade. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, born in 1946, was a notorious American serial killer who murdered at least 30 women across several states during the 1970s. Known for his charming and manipulative demeanor, Bundy would often approach his victims in public places, feign injury or disability, and then abduct and kill them. His ability to evade capture for years and his sudden confessions before his execution in 1989 made him one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Bundy's trial and execution were widely publicized, and his story has been explored in countless documentaries, books, and films, highlighting his cold, calculated nature and his disturbing psychological profile. Al Capone. Al Capone, born in 1899, was a notorious gangster and the most infamous figure in Chicago's organized crime scene during the Prohibition era. As the leader of the Chicago outfit, Capone controlled bootlegging operations, gambling, and various other illegal activities. His organization was responsible for numerous murders, including the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, which resulted in the deaths of 7 members of a rival gang. Despite his violent activities, Capone's wealth and influence made him a celebrity of sorts, and he was often portrayed as a folk hero in the media. He was eventually convicted of tax evasion in 1931 and sentenced to prison, where his health declined. He died in 1947, leaving behind a legacy that has since been immortalized in films, television, and books about organized crime. These criminals left a lasting impact through acts of violence, terror, and deception, captivating people worldwide. Driven by greed, power, or a twisted sense of justice, their complex legacies continue to be explored in documentaries, films, and books. Figures like Bonnie and Clyde, Osama bin Laden, and Jesse James remind us of the extremes some will go to for wealth and control. While some are mythologized, others are notorious for their brutality. Their stories endure, fueling society's fascination with the darker side of human nature and the individuals who defy the law.